Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Doc of Detox show. Today's show is The 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient with Dr. Patrick Quillin. I'm very excited to announce that tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be back to answer all your questions live. Also, do not forget about this Friday's Doc Talk Q&A, where I'll be answering all your emotional, physical, and nutritional questions live at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now understand something. For both of these Q&As, you can go on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Intercom, okay? And you can send in your questions live for tomorrow's Q&A and for Friday's Q&A, okay? Or you can send them in ahead of time. And understand something, we will answer all your questions. Last week, okay, I did a show with Del Bigtree, who was the director of Vaxxed, okay? And I got to tell you something, the response was unbelievable. We did the show, and then we did the Q&A, and we have had 40,000 people watch that Q&A. So understand something. Questions matter, but answers even matter more. But they have to be truthful. They've got to be logical. And that's what you're going to get from Dr. Patrick Quillin is logic. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's done their homework. You want to talk about somebody who knows their stuff, okay? And has a best-selling book out right now, and it's going to be able to be purchased, and you want to have it. So, Dr. Patrick Quillin, how are you today?
Terrific. Thank you for sharing your viewers, Dr. Wolfe.
Well, listen, there are viewers. Teamwork makes the dream work. And before we move on, everyone, I want to say something right now. And I mean this in the best way. But sometimes when I think about where we're going and where we are, it can be despairing. And I think Dr. Quillin could even say that with me too. But the reality is guess what? Never give up on yourself and never give up on nature. But I will tell you that society systems are collapsing. And if you want to cow tie and hook up to society systems, you're going to collapse too. And that's what this show is about today, is about not collapsing. You are going to be getting life-saving strategies, techniques, and tips, okay? And don't take the word tips lightly. From Dr. Patrick Quillin, I'm telling you something. He is somebody that I listen to. He's somebody that I follow, all right? So now let's begin the show. Dr. Quillin is a true healer who has offered a well-documented approach to healing and preventing cancer with the right supplements and high vibrational food. Welcome to the show, Dr. Quillin. How are you today?
I'm doing terrific. It's great to be with you. We have a lot to talk about. This is an exciting year. We're in a new year, a new decade, and what you say is very true. We're in the edge of a revolution and an evolution, and things are getting better. And sometimes they have to get a little bit worse before they get better. I believe in the Tao Te Ching, it says sometimes new beginnings are disguised as painful endings. And I believe that the pharmaceutical industry, making roughly a half a trillion a year in America and 1 trillion a year around the world, is not going to go quietly into the night. So science advances one funeral at a time. And I think we could just look at in history, for instance, around 1860, Ignaz Semmelweis was a physician in Austria, Vienna, Austria, at a time when there was a horrific problem with maternal fever, puerperal fever. And what would happen is a doctor would do an autopsy, they go in the next room and they deliver a foal or a young pony, a horse. Then they go in the next room and deliver a baby. And the incidence of infections was nearly 90%. The death rate was a third, 30% died. This was awful. And Dr. Semmelweis said, I think we should wash our hands. So he developed a technique of light bleach solution, wash your hands. It worked. It was 100% effective. He could prove it. It was non-toxic. It cost almost nothing. And his peers said, what do you think is causing this problem, Dr. Semmelweis? And he says, I don't know. And they said, is it spooks? And they laughed him out of the medical profession. And 30 years later, Louis Pasteur came forth with a microscope and a laboratory, and he said, I have found Dr. Semmelweis's spooks. And what he found was bacteria that cause those infections. And so science advanced. There's sometimes painful beginnings and revolutions and evolutions, but I applaud your efforts, and I know that things are changing. The people are awakening to the fact that Number one, if I could do anything to the next hour that we're together, is implant a sense of empowerment in our viewers and a sense of self reliance. Because what's happening in the Western world, Canada, the US, Australia, Europe, etc., is people assume they can eat, drink, and smoke anything they want. And when they get sick, and they will, they go to their doctor and take whatever drugs are recommended without asking the question, but my body is supposed to be self regulating and self repairing. What happened? And that's what you and I talk about as the essence of our career. How can we get your body back to its miraculous state of self regulating and self repairing? And in my book, 12 Keys, what I mentioned are the six main factors, and then there's the six other keys, but six main factors. Number one is attitude, and I hope we get into that subject. Number two is toxins. Number three is nutrition. Number four is exercise. Number five is the microbiome. And number six is the body electric or energy alignment. And those six factors make your body self regulating and self repairing. We have this extraordinary organism, 37 trillion cells working like an incredible V12 BMW. And it's just awesome what it can do if we feed it the right way, and if we eliminate the toxins that interfere with these biological functions. So I'm looking forward to whatever direction you want to head, Dr. Wolfe.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. If I can say a couple things, the first thing is the reason why people smoke and drink and eat anything they want is because their doctor says you can do that. I mean, I can tell you right now, and you can believe it or not believe it. So last week, I probably dealt with I deal with a lot of cancer patients every week, but last week I can't tell you exactly. It was two or three that would actually said, well, I left the doctor and he said it doesn't really matter what you do. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
their training is not so good when it comes to creating that perfect day, that healthy day. And the other thing is, understand something, that when you were talking about the bacteria, and I'd like you to comment on this too, that bacteria are not the enemy. It's what we
No,
do to
no.
them that makes them into the enemy. I mean, you can cause a bad relationship with your wife, your children, or with your bacteria, but your bacteria
Yes.
are the smartest part of the human being, I think.
Absolutely. And what happened with that breakthrough, and Louis Pasteur, who became the first rock star of science, he worked on obviously pasteurization, Louis Pasteur, and he thought cooking all the bacteria is what we should do. Unfortunately, they came up with the soundbite of the only good bacteria is a dead one, and that launched by 1943. Alexander Fleming won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for his work in developing antibiotics, and at that point, everybody got handfuls of antibiotics for everything. And about 1960, a physician in Alabama, Orion Truss, an MD, noticed a dramatic uptick in autoimmune diseases. And he linked it to antibiotics, which then created dysbiosis in the gut. And here's the soundbite: you are more something else than you. Let me explain that. The average adult body has about 37 trillion cells. And in each of those cells, there's about 100,000 chemical reactions going on per second. However, there's 100 trillion cells in your gut that are an important part of your health. And you can't kill them. And if you do, you create a huge problem. And so, dysbiosis, I mentioned those six factors that are from my book, 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient. One of those is the microbiome. And the Human Microbiome Project was completed in the year 2005 at a cost of $3 billion. dollars. And what they found is we have this 100 trillion microbes, and it's a variety of organisms. There's yeast and bacteria and exotic organisms in abundance. And what they find is if about 80% of them are friendly or probiotic, and about 20% are relatively unfriendly, the 80% wins and it outvotes the others, and we're in good health. And there is this incredible crosstalk, postbiotic organisms that are created from these microbes. And I'll take you back. I just mentioned a mistake that science made around 1860 when they said Dr. Semmelweis was crazy. We fast forward to Louis Pasteur and he says, cook all the bacteria. Wrong. We fast forward to 1943 when Alexander Fleming said everybody should take handfuls of antibiotics. And to this day, in America, there are 60 million pounds of antibiotics consumed. Anti means against, biotic means life. So 60 million pounds consumed per year, of which half of that, 30 million pounds, goes to animals at subtherapeutic levels to allow them to survive in what is horrific conditions. And the other 30 million pounds is fed to us in the form of prescription drugs, of which the Center for Disease Control says at least 30% of those prescriptions are inappropriate and they create problems. So I'm fast forwarding, bring you up to Orion Truss in the 1960s, his book, The Missing Diagnosis, in which he said, because of all these antibiotics, we're creating a dysbiosis in the gut, which allows for a yeast overgrowth, which allows for autoimmune diseases. And today in America, there are 80 autoimmune diseases that are affecting 50 million people, and much of it is because of a dysbiosis. And we can talk about that, my friend.
Absolutely. So I'd like to ask you a question, and I mean this in the best way because we know that modern medicine has made some amazing strides. That they save lives, but that doesn't discount that they're the number one cause of ending of one's life in this country. I want to know, and I'd like to let our audiences know, where does medicine fail that they keep on trying to sell us, but it's a failed procedure?
Well, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of
Sure.
modern medicine. The good is emergency medicine in the emergency room, the ER, the intensive care unit. They can take someone who was literally almost destroyed in an accident. There are motorcycle car accidents, knife and gun stabbings. What we can do for soldiers who are wounded in combat, the emergency room is phenomenal. And I applaud what they do. Add into that pain management, analgesics have reached an extraordinary level in which no one should live or die in pain. Applaud them on that. And that's where things starting to end in a bad way. So that's the good. The bad is taking degenerative diseases such as heart disease, hypertension, cancer, diabetes, stroke, kidney failure, liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, all of these conditions. And actually, a new study came out saying that 88% of Americans have some metabolic disorder. So modern medicine is a $3.5 trillion a year industry, dispensing $480 billion a year in drugs, attempting to reverse the symptoms of those degenerative diseases. And they can mask symptoms briefly, but in fact, they allow the condition to worsen while they're masking the symptoms. So it's kind of like you're driving down the road, you got a 100-mile trip ahead of you, and the engine oil light comes on. So you put a piece of tape over that light. Now you don't have to see it anymore. But the problem didn't go away. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse, which is why people like Dean Ornish, Dr. Ornish is a Harvard med graduate. He was a cardiologist. He started watching patients coming back for their second, third, and fourth bypass surgery. And he said, something's wrong with this picture. So he did his research and found that through a vegan or plant based diet, meditation, exercise, and a socialization process, because loneliness kills. So Dr. Ornish put together this program and he found he could not only slow down heart disease, he could reverse it and keep it so that it was at bay. There was no second and third bypass surgeries. And Dr. Ornish has branded this as lifestyle medicine. And he took that same program and went to prostate cancer patients, those with indolent or slow growing prostate cancer. And what he did is applied the same program. And what they did is they did needle aspiration. So they stuck a needle into the prostate of these patients before. Then they gave them a 90-day program, stuck a needle in again and took out cells. And they did what called microarrays. And so they looked at the DNA of these cancer cells. And they found after a 90-day program, lifestyle medicine, that there were 500 DNA changes in these prostate cancer patients, which were indicative of them heading towards recovery. So back to my good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is emergency room. The bad is trying to treat degenerative diseases with therapies that actually allow the problem to exacerbate. Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz is a great man. He's got a TV show. Once again, he's a cardiovascular surgeon. He also got tired of doing bypass surgery on patients and finding it doesn't work. So that's why he's on TV doing holistic medicine, nutrition. Great. So the bad is misinforming people about these therapies. The ugly is the real propaganda that's going on, Dr. Wolfe. And what we have is the internet has become the main artery of information for the world. Rough numbers, there's 7.8 billion people on Earth. Roughly 3 billion of those people have access to the internet, some of them not much of an access, such as in Iran, North Korea, where they scrub and censor the internet. But anyway, let's say 3 billion people have access to the internet, which should be a wonderful, objective source of information, but it's not. Wikipedia, for instance, has been hijacked by pharmaceutical companies. And if you look up almost anything with respect to health, alternative care, if you look up anything that's against vaccines, you will be redirected by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg towards more friendly recommendations about vaccines. In other words, you can't get the truth. And what's happening, the ugly, is that people who are well intentioned, your viewers, people who want answers, they want to be self reliant, they want to get well. And unfortunately, much of the internet has been hijacked by the pharmaceutical industry to mislead people, propaganda. In 1939, when Hitler took over Germany, the first thing he did is he took over the media, newspapers, radio programs, so that no one could talk against him. And that's unfortunately what is happening. They're scrubbing, sanitizing, deplatforming much of the information that should go out to the people. So I applaud what you're doing, and I applaud you viewers for getting the truth.
Thank you, sir. And if I could make a comment before I have another question here, but if I could make a comment, I can remember when I used to get migraine headaches and I would take these migraine bombs because I wanted to keep on pushing through. That was years ago. And the reality is that thank God I had them. But the reality was, if I would have kept on doing them, I would have been dumbed down. I wouldn't have the energy, the vibrancy. I wouldn't have the feeling of thriving. I'd be just surviving. So
Yes.
when it comes to even pain management, and I do want to say this, and I know you weren't talking about this, but I want everybody to understand. I just want to make it a little bit more in depth. That when you're doing pain management with drugs, you're cutting off the pain, but the inflammation is still going on. And your body's creating scar tissue. So at the end of the day, you're going to be as stiff as a board and have all these physical blocks in you that doesn't allow your energy to move. And so you might be numbed out on that level that you could perform, but your performance will go down unless you go and look at the 12 keys that we're talking about with Dr. Quillin today to actually get to the root problem so that you can stop the drugs. But sometimes, you know what, if I didn't have the migraine tablet, I'd be in bed moaning and groaning for the whole day. So the
Yes.
reality is yes, emergency care should be there, but it cannot be put into your daily care, or else you will
True.
become the emergency on a
True.
24-hour basis.
Let me explain my comment about pain management, and let's be clear about this. A patient who has been in a severe auto accident, broken bones, back broken, nerves are being pinched, they need pain management.
Yes.
What you are talking about is someone, let me give you an example. Let's say that every morning I come to my office and I slam my thumb in the filing cabinet. Oh, that hurt. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I keep slamming my thumb in the filing cabinet drawer. And I go to Dr. A, who says, well, we're going to give you pain management to allow you to better tolerate this. And I go to Dr. B, who says, we're going to give you corticosteroids to reduce the swelling of your thumb. And I go to Dr. C, who is a surgeon, and he said, I think we should cut off the thumb because it looks defective. And of course, this is a ridiculous example, and everybody out there is saying, well, that's foolish. Just stop slamming your thumb in the desk drawer. That's true. Now, let's look at a realistic example. Um, Rough numbers. There are 30 million Americans who have diabetes, another 60 million who are pre diabetic. Diabetes creates a long-term luge ride. Luge meaning a sled where it's going to end down. You can't change things if you stay on this diabetes track, and it ends up as gangrene, kidney failure, heart disease, Alzheimer's, a whole assortment of things. And so you can have drugs that attempt to manage this, but the simplest thing to do is diet, detox, intermittent fasting, exercise, stress reduction. And what those do is take away the slamming your thumb in the desk drawer. Another example, some of the most common over the counter drugs today are Prilosec and drugs that help with heartburn. So people stagger around with heartburn. They take a pill for their acid indigestion and they think the problem went away. No, it didn't. What you have done is you've allowed the problem to continue merrily on. And in fact, what they find is these proton inhibitors or protonics, which basically they shut down the making of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. What those drugs do is actually increase your risk of necrosis of the jaw and cancer of the stomach. So it did solve the problem for the day. So I'm back with you on the subject of if you have a problem that needs to be addressed, by all means address it. If you're in bed with extreme pain, and I have worked with a lot of late stage cancer patients where I wouldn't I wouldn't have my neighbor's barking dog die in that kind of pain. They need pain management. So appropriate use of pain management, but not masking of the symptoms that then allow the condition to worsen. I'm with you.
Thank you very much. And I'll tell you about the diabetic thing. I did a consultation on a gentleman. He's 22 years old and he's been a diabetic since he was 8 years old. And what I did was I just took a few minutes to explain to him and said, yes, okay, yes, you need your insulin, but out of everybody in the family, I bet you're the only one that actually does a lot of binging of foods because you know that you can always rely on the insulin or just do more insulin. And his family was sitting right there and they all started to laugh and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. We never thought of it that way before, but he uses his actual insulin so that he can just have full swing at everything and as much as he wants to eat.
Oh, yeah. And let me just go back to the slamming your thumb in the desk drawer. Another example, GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, is extremely common in Western society. GERD increases your risk for esophageal cancer 1,300%. Another, slamming your thumb in the desk drawer. You've got to deal with the digestive disorders. And sometimes it almost falls into gallows humor at a certain point, Dr. Wolfe. But there was an ad in a magazine in which it showed there was a piece of pepperoni pizza, so a slice that was a wedge of pepperoni pizza. And on the side of it, it looked like a saw. So it had a serrated edge like a saw. And it said, you know what it's like when you eat your favorite food. And I think about the hysterical joke, doctor, every time I do this, it hurts. Well, then don't do that. No, no, I got a better example. Take your drug and then you can keep doing that. And that's what modern medicine does is it allows a false reliance on medication to continue with an unhealthy lifestyle. Let me pursue our whole business of 12 keys to a healthier cancer patient. We need to get to some reality orientation. I've got the good news and the bad news. Let me give us the bad news. Around the world in Western society, it's proportionately the same, but I'm going to give you numbers in America. This year, 1.6 million Americans will be newly diagnosed with cancer. 600,000 Americans will die from cancer this year. Let me make that more proportionate. If you loaded up four 747 airplanes, which house about 400 people each, that's 1,600 people, and crashed them every day, that's 1,600 people to die a day, that's what's happening in cancer. If that happened with the airplane, somebody would get to the bottom of it. But what we keep doing is throwing more money into the chemo, radiation, and surgery, futile efforts, and we're going to come back to that. But let me talk about the reality of cancer. Right now, there are roughly 12 million Americans in the cancer pipeline, that is, in treatment or watchful waiting. 42% of Americans will get cancer in their lifetime. The big four cancers are lung, breast, prostate, and colon. But there's about 200 different, more obscure forms of cancer. And let's go back to the treatments. So if you get cancer, what are the likelihood they're going to be able to help you? Well, 42% of Americans get it, and 24% die from it. And many people say that the others who allegedly were cured, that the statistics are doctored, what's called accounting irregularities. For instance, 67% of cancer patients will get chemotherapy. Statistics prove that chemo is effective in about 2 to 3% of advanced epithelial cancer. So, in the beginning, what will happen is the doctor will jump up and down saying, we're getting a 50% shrinkage of the tumor mass. 3 months later, they say, well, actually, it's not shrinking at all. It's growing. And as a matter of fact, it's become chemo resistant. And so 2 years later, the patient dies of cardiac arrest. Actually, the chemo caused the cardiac arrest. The cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but the real cause was cancer and the drugs that were used to treat it. And this is the accounting irregularities that go on all the time in the healthcare industry. So that's the bad news about cancer. Let's talk about the good news. All the noted experts agree that 90 to 95% of cancer is driven by lifestyle. That means you can do something about it. And that's why you and I are here talking to your viewers is empowerment. There are lifestyle factors that drive cancer. There was a physician, an MD, PhD, Dr. David Servin Schreiber, who he was working at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and just as sort of a guinea pig, they said, "Why don't you climb into the MRI machine?" All right. When he got out, he said, "You got brain cancer." He said, "Wait a minute, I'm 33, I'm healthy. What are you crazy?" Well, he did. He had brain cancer. And of course, a very poor prognostic cancer, glioblastoma. And so he began researching the subject and found that among his MDs, it's a untreatable, poor prognostic cancer, probably going to die within 2 years, and you'll have seizures as you're dying. He said, "I'm not going to put up with that." So Dr. Schreiber, with an MD, PhD, started researching the subject of cancer. And what he found is the Western lifestyle, this is a quote from his book, the Western lifestyle is fertilizer for cancer. And so I gave you the bad news, the statistics about how common cancer is. In the year 1900, 1% of Americans died of cancer. This year, it will be 24%. But you can do something about it. You can prevent it. And if you get cancer, you can use lifestyle to help reverse your cancer, because nobody with cancer is suffering from a deficiency of adriamycin or leucovorin or any of the other chemotherapeutic drugs, cisplatin. These are drugs that sometimes slow down cancer cells in a test tube, especially, but oftentimes are ineffective in the patient. And the list of side effects is so extensive that this is true. The nurse will tell the cancer patient who's getting an IV of chemo, when you urinate, flush twice, because the chemo in your urine will kill all the bacteria in the sewage treatment plant that's 3 miles away. That's how nasty this stuff is. So chemo, radiation, and surgery are the common therapies used for cancer. Chemo has its effect in, for instance, Lance Armstrong, who was the celebrated fraudulent winner of the Tour de France, and he had testicular cancer. And you think about this, he sat on that tiny bicycle seat, which is more like an enema than a seat, for 4 to 6 hours a day, and then he got testicular cancer. Well, chronic inflammation, slamming the thumb in the desk drawer, like I mentioned before. So he gets testicular cancer. They do removal of one testicle, and then they do chemotherapy. Chemo is effective in testicular cancer. And he recovered, and he went on to raise $500 million for chemo research. And chemo can work in some childhood cancers, some leukemias. However, it increases the risk for these children to get cancer later on in life. So chemo can help some people, but it can hurt a lot of people. However, here's an interesting footnote. It is illegal for a medical doctor to make money on a prescription. You cannot prescribe statin drugs and make a profit from it. However, oncologists make 2/3 of their income from the sale of chemotherapy. And what happened in the 1960s with the advent of chemo drugs is that doctors wouldn't use it. It was too toxic. They watched their patients suffer. And so they had to change the rules, the laws on medicine, so that oncologists, and there's about 20,000 in the USA, make most of their money on chemo. That's why they dispense it. There are some oncologists who are awakened to the fact that this may do more harm than good. And so they look into methods such as my book. For instance, IV vitamin C, hyperthermia, pulsed electromagnetic fields. There are detoxification methods. In my book, I show how, for instance, with nutrition, the Hale study looked at the Mediterranean diet, which is basically a plant-based diet, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, some seaweed, a small amount of red meat, small amount of chicken, fish, a little bit of yogurt, cheese, that olive oil, naps, garlic. That is the Mediterranean lifestyle. And what they found is on the Hale Project and the Mediterranean lifestyle, you could lower overall mortality simply with Hale diet, red wine, no smoking, and a little bit of exercise. You could lower overall mortality by 60%. If that was a drug, it would have been headlines around the world. I mentioned all of the studies on nutrients. I could go on for the vitamins, minerals, proteins. For instance, there is concern these days about the keto diet. Everyone's looking at living on bacon and avocado. Bad idea. You will lower blood glucose, but you put the body into a ketoacidosis. Acidosis is the operative word here. And the inconvenient truth is that your body can make glucose out of protein, carbohydrate, or fat, and it will do so. So I'm back to my six points: attitude, nutrition, detoxification, exercise, the microbiome in the gut, and energy alignment. And any one of those topics would be worthy of an hour of your time, Dr. Wolfe. I'll let you take the conversation.
Well, I'll just take it for a second because I want to come back to something, and that's the big topic about cancer. Remember when Richard Nixon declared war on cancer 47 years ago? Where did
Yes.
we stand then and where we stand today? And can you please explain to people why they created that? Why they created it?
It was 1971, the Vietnam War, Watergate. Nixon was extremely unpopular, and he said, well, let's have a common enemy. Everybody's against cancer. Let's do something that we can all support. And so he launched the war on cancer with the same idea that America went to the moon. So in the 1950s, Russia and America were in a space race, and it was part of this Cold War standoff. In 1960, John Kennedy was elected president, and he said, we're going to the moon by 1969. And we did. And it was an extraordinary accomplishment of science and technology. And they had to leap many hurdles in order to go to the moon in 9 years. They had to create computers. They had to create transistors, solid state electrical things that were lighter in weight and used low energy. All the creations that came out of the space race ended up filtering into society, and we get to benefit from. One of them's right now. You and I are on the internet talking through computers because of the space race. Wonderful. So Nixon said, we're going to beat cancer with the same level of technology. Unfortunately, they used antiquated methods. At the time, they were using chemo, radiation, and surgery, and they don't work. And imagine if in the space race in 1960, and they said, we're going to the moon, they said, well, the most powerful engine we have right now is a locomotive. We're going to make a really powerful locomotive to go to the moon. No, no, that wouldn't work. You have to have a paradigm shift. And that's exactly what they had to do. I'll give you another idea: the paradigm shift. Throughout most of human history, people wanted to keep track of time. And so they looked at the sun and the moon and the stars, and then they developed pendulums that would swing back and forth. And then from the pendulums came clocks with gears, and the clock gears kept getting smaller, and it became Big Ben, and then it became pocket watches. And they kept saying, if we can get these gears smaller and put jewels on it, they keep getting more accurate. And somebody said, no, explode that paradigm. I'm going to take a piece of sand, silicon, and I'm going to pump some electricity through it, and it has a pulse, literally a heartbeat, and we're going to keep time with that. No moving parts, keeps perfect time almost forever if you've got a solar powered watch. So a paradigm shift. And what happened in 1972 is they tried to use the same old fashioned methods to beat cancer, and they don't work. There never will be a single one magic drug that cures cancer. So let's fast forward. What happened? 1972, Nixon said, we will have a cure for a major cancer by the bicentennial, which is 1976, 5 years later. They didn't. We still don't. And we're talking almost a half a century later, and we have spent about $1 trillion in research and about $4 trillion in therapy, and we're no closer to a cure for any major cancer than when we started, because we're using antiquated, paradigm busting methods of chemo, radiation, and surgery. You cannot cut, burn, and poison the cancer out of the body. You have to change the way the body works. And there was a pivotal study done in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, which is the peer reviewed scientific journal from the clinical oncologist. in 1998, which they said, we have reached the pinnacle of the ability to eliminate cancer through cytotoxic methods. We need to think of re regulating the human body. And this is where our therapies come in, Dr. Wolfe. What you are doing and what I am doing is we're talking about you can re regulate the body. You can tell the body this is how you're supposed to work. And then it says, oh, I didn't see that cancer. Let me give you an example. I worked with thousands of cancer patients in a hospital setting, and if I may be so bold as to just give you a very brief background I have,
Please.
I've earned my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees in nutrition. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian. I'm a certified nutrition specialist with the American College of Nutrition, a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. I taught college nutrition for 9 years. I worked for 10 years as vice president of nutrition for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, which allowed me to write my book, Beating Cancer with Nutrition, which sold 500,000 copies and is 5 languages. I also organized 3 international symposia, CME Category 1 symposia on adjuvant nutrition in cancer treatment. And we issued a textbook from that. And so my background is extensive. I worked with thousands of patients in the hospital setting. I'm just going to give you one of them. Patient came to our hospital with stage 3B colon cancer, advanced. He had a tumor in his colon the size of a golf ball, and he had various metastases in the lymph nodes. Based upon MRIs, CAT scan, PET scans, colonoscopies, they said, right now you're so weak, you could not tolerate, you could not survive colon surgery. So we want you to go see Quillin, listen to him, and on your way out, and come back in a month and we'll do surgery. So he and I had a talk. We talked about diet, supplements, lifestyle, everything that's in my book. He came back a month later. They did surgery and they did a tumor board on him. Every week was tumor board in which the doctors gather together and they discuss one patient. In this case, that patient actually had been a former football player at the University of Alabama. But his case was unique because they said we took out a golf ball sized tumor and 12 lymph nodes, and all of them were necrotic. That means dead. That means the body's immune system woke up, encapsulated it, killed it, and was in the process of cleaning it up. So your body has the ability to recognize and destroy cancer cells. You just need to do your part to help.
But that's not recognized through an x ray or ultrasound, correct?
No, and what's interesting is if you brought the patient back in a month and the patient said, let's just look at what the x-rays look like, they look the same. Actually, they might even look larger because what happens is as the body recognizes cancer, it begins to attack it, and there's an inflammation and a collagen encapsulation process, and then a tumor necrosis that goes on. An example, breast augmentation. Many women go in for this procedure in which there is a bag, a small bag. It used to be a silicone bag. Now it's a saline or saltwater bag placed in the woman's breast. And the woman's body will spend the rest of its life recognizing and trying to destroy, and it will encapsulate that bag of salt water. And so they eventually harden and eventually have to take them out. That's exactly what happens when the body recognizes a cancer. It encapsulates it. It will try and wrap it in a tough collagen envelope. It will cut off its blood supply. It will try to kill it. And that's what happens with cancer when the body recognizes it. However, on an x-ray, it looks like the thing's still there, but it's dead.
Excellent. So if we can just take if I can take a little detour too, I want everybody to understand something that Dr. Quillin hit it right on the head. As long as there's inflammation, as long as there's irritation, your body's going to keep on creating the collagen, the fibrin. It's going to send it to the area because your body loves you, and the body overcompensates for that. And that's what I'm always talking about, is that even after a person has healed, okay, and they say you're healed, there's a lot of scar tissue crystallization, displaced calcium left in that area. And that's where we've got to go in and clean that stuff up. And that's where grandpa becomes stiff as a board. Or as you get older, you don't have that flexibility, you don't have that energy flow. But understand something. This is why we've got to learn how to create that day, that we've got to start taking massive personal action the way Dr. Quillin is talking right now. Can we take a little detour here just for a second? I'd like to know where you believe that cancer and genetics come in. Okay?
Good. Let's talk about genetics.
Okay.
Genes are powerful. We have within us 23 pairs of chromosomes. The Human Genome Project took 12 years. We spent $15 billion. There were 2,000 institutions around the world that participated in this project. And at the end of that time, what the Human Genome Project said is, and I quote the scientist, 90% of the human DNA is junk or non coding. That's what they said. And that humans are 97.5% identical to mice. That's what they said. Now, if you think that's exactly what Mother Nature has in mind, and what they did is think of a staircase in a lighthouse, a spiral staircase in a lighthouse that goes up to the moon. In this case, it's a very long one, and then wrap it into a three-dimensional conformational, like a bowl of spaghetti. And what they did is they laid that ladder out in a two-dimensional way and broke it down into base pairs, adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. And from that, they tried to decode it. Now imagine if you opened up a book and it was in Russian, but there was a few words in English, and you could read the words in English, but you couldn't read the words in Russian. And you said, this is junk. No, it isn't. Mother Nature knows what it's doing. There's no junk in there, I guarantee you. Anyway, genes. From that Human Genome Project, the doctors came up with tests, such as the BRCA1 test. That's a gene that increases your risk for breast cancer. Angelina Jolie, her mother died of breast cancer at age 56. Angelina Jolie went in for a breast cancer genetic test. The doctor said, you've got the gene. Angelina went in for a prophylactic, meaning let's prevent the cancer, prophylactic bilateral mastectomy. That was her choice, the doctor's choice. I don't second guess it. However, what has been shown very clearly is that 90 to 95% of all cancer is lifestyle driven. That means genes plays a role in 5, maybe 10% of it. Let me take you from cancer into the subject of Alzheimer's, and I'll give you another example. Dale Bredesen is a medical doctor at the University of California, Los Angeles, and he's done pioneering work on reversing Alzheimer's, which was considered impossible. Doctors would hope the Alzheimer's patient would go away because there's nothing they could do for them. And what Dr. Bredesen found is that there is a specific gene found in about 15% of the population that makes you at higher risk for Alzheimer's. However, you then must have an unhealthy lifestyle. So disease is a collision between genetics and an unhealthy lifestyle. It's not just one, it's both. So genetics plays a role. I look a little bit like my ancestors. That's genes. I don't have to die of the same diseases as my ancestors. That is epigenetics. Epi means above. And that's what my whole book is about, is epigenetics. How can you modify lifestyle risk factors?
Beautiful.
Let me just point out, back to Dr. Bredesen's work, and I'll finish up with Alzheimer's. What he found is he can reverse Alzheimer's, and he's done it in hundreds of patients, but it takes a detailed lifestyle examination. There's no one pill that will ever do it. He talks about hormone balancing, detoxification. For instance, one of his patients liked to enjoy candles in her house. She had candles going all day long, and he found an extraordinary amount of this one particular petrochemical in her body, which was a byproduct of burning cheap candles. He had to detoxify her. He had to balance hormones. She had a B12 and a folate deficiency. She had an elevated blood glucose. He had to get her into lowering her insulin and her CRP, which is C-reactive protein, which is inflammation. He had to do this whole body of tests and efforts to reverse the underlying cause, and then he can reverse Alzheimer's. And we can do the same thing with cancer patients, but it's not going to be a one pill cure.
Yep, it's got to be a many prong approach, meaning that you actually have to have the patient get involved, right?
Yeah, yes,
And
absolutely. Too often, people in Western medicine look at themselves when they get sick, they feel like they're in a car going through a car wash. I'm just going to sit here and let everything happen to me. No, you have to get involved. That's where there's a partnership between the patient and the doctor, the therapist, and you have to have cooperation, because without the patient's cooperation, the patient When a doctor says there's a 90% chance you'll be dead in 2 years, if you keep doing what you're doing, and if you take the doctor's current therapy, they're right. And what they use is SEER data, SEER, surveillance, epidemiology, end result. And with the SEER data, what they show is that through the 500,000 people who have come before you with the same condition and the same treatment, here's what we expect. And they're right. However, if you want to change the outcome, you're going to have a different approach to the disease. And this is where diet, exercise, detoxification, attitude, microbiome, energy alignment will be the medicine of the 21st century, because the patient has to become a part of the solution just as much as they were inadvertently a part of the problem. And here's where patients come to me and they say, "Doctor, you just told me that I caused my own cancer." No, no one advertently, consciously wants to wake up with stage 4 colon cancer. No, but Hippocrates, 2,400 years ago, said that disease comes about by an accumulation of daily sins, which eventually results into a severe ailment. And this is where the patient gets to be a part of the solution. So, just as much as our lifestyle is part of the problem, your cooperation is going to be a part of the solution. So, to me, it's an empowerment issue. And here's where it gets kind of interesting, Dr. Wolfe. A study was done in Europe in which they looked at smokers and how much they cost the healthcare system. And of course, most of Europe is social medicine, meaning it's free. You can go to the doctor anytime you want, it doesn't cost anything. So they looked at smokers versus non smokers and who cost the system more. Guess who cost the system more?
The smoker.
Non smokers.
Really? Why is that?
The smokers died right on time, about age 60. The non-smokers lived to be 95 or 100,
Right.
and in their latter 10 years, they cost the system more. So guess what the government does? They allow smoking to be legal.
Right. Well, the reality is if we take a look at it, and I just, like my one a day today is, are you smelling what they're selling? And the
Yeah.
reason what I'm saying is that the government doesn't sell anything that's healthy. They don't. So let's just get that perfectly clear. You know, they don't. They don't. They're not working for us. And when you were saying earlier about yeah, it's the sins that you accumulate. Just listen to everybody, but and remember what sin is. It's missing the mark. And the problem is that you've been given a bow and an arrow, and every arrow was actually manufactured that when you shot it, it would always miss the target, because we've been educated into ignorance. So if you're out there and you're in pain and you're suffering, and I think Dr. Quillin can agree with me that if you're in pain and suffering, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. We were given this body by our Creator, and anybody on this planet that says that they can take care of your body for you, they don't live behind the toilet, they don't live in your bed, they don't live with your home. It's your body. No one else can look after it.
I'll give you an example of what you're talking about. Sugar is killing people in Western society. We consume about 20% of our calories from refined white sugar. That's sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, etc. It's in almost all foods. I fly a lot. You go to an airport, I can buy a quart of Coke cheaper than a quart of water. So sugar is in all these foods. We eat too much of it, it's killing us. Studies show that excess sugar in consumption kills probably about 155,000 Americans a year prematurely. All right, given that, a group of scientists, the Institute of Medicine, IOM, which is an advisory branch of Congress, gathered together and they said, we think we should lower the intake of sugar. And so the sugar industry came in and pressured Congress and pressured the lobbying industry to say, we're going to cut funding on all of your programs if you make a recommendation to lower sugar intake. So the Institute of Medicine came out with a recommendation that our sugar intake should be no more than 25% of our calories. Get that. So we're getting 20% and it's killing 155,000 people a year. They said, have some more. That's your government at work. So the government is basically working for the lobbyists who are working for the invisible puppeteers, and their whole agenda is basically centers around disease is big business. Disease in America is a $3.5 trillion a year industry, a half a trillion in drugs, and they don't want you to get well. The only way you're of any value to them is if you're halfway between well and dead. And so I'm encouraging our viewers as we're nearing the end of our program. You can opt out of this system. You can get healthy. You can change the way your body works. You can improve it. You can make yourself so invincible, so invulnerable to disease that you're going to feel like you're 10, 20 years younger if you'll follow our advice. But don't expect the government or TV to come out with some announcement about here's how we're going to make you healthier. Does intermittent fasting make anyone any money? No, certainly not the junk food industry or the drug industry. Does detoxification make people any money? And if you want to talk about a government collusion, there is a book called Poison Spring by a career worker at the Environmental Protection Agency. And he came out with his book saying the EPA is working for the chemical industry that they're supposed to be policing. In metaphorical terms, the sheriff is owned by the biggest rancher in the valley. So if you're looking for the government to help out, may not happen. There's 1 million very bright medical doctors in America, and less than 1% of them have training in what you and I are doing. The rest of them have been misled into thinking that drugs and surgery are the only approach to medicine. But more and more of them are coming on board because they find the effectiveness of using these therapies to prevent and reverse disease. And they love the way their patients give them a big hug when they say, thank you.
Absolutely. Can I ask you a question though? Can you tell our audience what you mean by energy alignment in the human body?
We are the body electric. We are this incredible giant battery. I mentioned there's 37 trillion cells in the human body. A human body generates about 100 watts of electricity at any given time. Literally, that's about 10 LED bulbs that you could light up with the electricity that's in your body. And what's going on is energy metabolism, that is taking food and breaking it down into its component part and turning it into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the currency of energy in the body, is literally making electricity energy. And what we find is sick cells generate less electricity. And those cells then become vulnerable to opportunistic pathogens. So that's a whole new pathway, avenue of discussion we could go down. But there are many people who believe that cancer and infections are nothing more than opportunistic invaders that take over a sick cell. So what happens is through a poor lifestyle, through stress, poor diet, toxins, the microbiome being in dysbiosis, lack of exercise. Because of that, our body's voltage drops down. Because of that, these cancer cells and opportunistic infections, yeast, bacteria, step in and they begin a disease that you could call pneumonia, cancer, call it whatever you want, but it's because a sick cell was invaded, opportunistic. They take the opportunity. So back to the business of energy alignment, acupuncture, chiropractic, the sunlight, therapies such as low-level laser therapy, pulsed electromagnetic fields, biomodulators, all of these therapies are using methods to try and bolster the human body, the power grid. For instance, if someone has a heart attack and you're near an emergency room, the doctor may use a convulsive therapy in which they're pumping about 1,700 volts into your heart to try and resurrect your heart. That's electricity to get the heart started because the heart works on electricity. It has this pumping mechanism, an electrical valve that actually activates the heart with electricity. All of your nerves run electricity, your muscle, all of the cells in your body are electricity. And everything we're doing, everything you and I talk about, is trying to optimize the body electric.
So okay, if I can go a little further, so can you tell our audience how nutrition will affect the growth of cancer cells?
Yes. So what nutrition is doing is, and it makes such obvious sense, what you are, what you eat. Macronutrients, protein, carbohydrate, fat, fiber, water, macronutrients. Micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. And then we get to sub micronutrients, such as trace elements. And then we get to minor dietary constituents, things that are in food that are not considered essential yet. There are thousands of bioflavonoids, thousands of carotenoids. There are many of these substances, such as ellagic acid in dark berries, indole 3 carbinol that's found in cruciferous vegetables. All of these substances are performing biochemical functions, or literally magic. For instance, cancer is cropping up in all of us all of the time. What you have is every cell is subject to about 10,000 DNA hits per day. That means imagine trying to re roof your house in a category 5 hurricane. And that's what's going on in your body. And so the body has to deal with these mutations, these broken DNA cells. And it does so with nutrients such as ellagic acid, vitamin K, selenium, vitamin C, and these nutrients induce apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. You see, every cell in your body, it is born, it grows old, senescence, and then it dies, except cancer cells. They're immortal. And so there are nutrients in your diet that encourage a cancer cell to die, apoptosis. Then you have the business of angiogenesis. If a cancer starts growing in your body, anything larger than a pencil eraser, and it needs blood vessels to feed itself. And yet your body has what's called anti-angiogenesis factors that are found in things like selenium and fish oil. So we'll shut down the blood flow to the cancer to starve it. Then you have things like vitamin C, which is an antioxidant. It helps with tumor encapsulation. Some people think that most of us are staggering around in a preclinical scurvy, and that's what causes heart disease, cancer, and many other ailments, the connective tissue diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis. Why is everybody going in for a bilateral knee replacement? What's happening here? Many people speculate that there are nutrients involved in that. We have nutrients. Grandmother was practicing herbal medicine in her kitchen all day, every day with herbs, turmeric, garlic, onion, allspice, cinnamon. I could go on with the list of at least 50 different spices that have documented scientific value at reversing and slowing down cancer, heart disease, diabetes. So our diet is intimate in allowing us to prevent cancer. And I'll go back to Dr. David Servan Schreiber, the MD, PhD. He had brain cancer. He was told you got a few months to live, at most 2 years. He lived 11 years, and during that time, he wrote a book, The Anti-Cancer Lifestyle. But his point was Western diet is fertilizer for cancer. You want to get cancer? You want to be one of the 42% of Americans who will get cancer in your lifetime? Keep eating the normal SAD or standard American diet. Diet plays a huge role in preventing and reversing cancer. And I could go into the whole business of reversal. There have been some very good studies done. Um, One of them, I could pick a dozen, but one of them was done in Europe, in which these oncologists took lung cancer patients, and what they have is SEER data, surveillance epidemiology end result. And they know that in the many hundreds of thousands that have gone before you, if we do the routine therapy, that roughly you'll have 1% survival at 30 months. So in 2.5 years, almost everybody's dead. And so they said, we can't do any worse than that. Let's see if we add a diet and supplement program. So they gave them a decent diet, something you and I would say, that's good, that's better, it's an improvement. And they gave them a few supplements, nothing major, significant, no mega diet vitamins. And they found that these people, instead of having 1% survival at 30 months, they had 44% survival at 72 months or 6 years. So they had a dramatic improvement in quality and quantity of life while they were giving them chemo, radiation, and surgery. And what they noted in their study is the earlier the patient started antioxidant therapy, the better they perform and the better the outcome. Meanwhile, there's 20,000 oncologists in America laboring under the illusion that nutrients inhibit the effectiveness of chemo and radiation. Not true. And there are several meta-analysis of the literature proving that that's wrong. So nutrition will improve your outcome regardless of how you approach your therapies. Work with your doctor. I encourage you to do so. But if your doctor says, if you do any nutrients, then I won't treat you, find another doctor.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. If you cannot take antioxidants while you're on this protocol, and you know what? But they never give them a reason. It's just that we're not going to talk about it.
And I could give you go ahead,
No,
excuse me.
no, no. I want you to go ahead. You're doing
Well, I'll
great.
give you an example. Of the thousands of cancer patients I've worked with, multiple myeloma is a relatively rare cancer, and it begins in the bone marrow. And the body starts making abnormal numbers of cells from the bone marrow. And so it is extremely painful. It's usually fatal. It has a very poor prognosis. Sometimes patients are given bone marrow transplants, whatever. Let me just give you a comparison. Three patients who had multiple myeloma and their different outcomes. Patient one, I worked with. I said, here's what I'd like you to do. I spoke with both the patient and his oncologist, and I showed him my book, a stack of scientific literature. He brushed it all aside. He said, nonsense. He told the patient, if you do any of these nutrition therapies, I won't treat you. And so the patient did exactly what the oncologist told him. And the patient died in exquisite pain 18 months later, a year and a half later. Let's move on to patient B. Patient, again, was told you have multiple myeloma. Patient is about the same age as patient A, the first one. This patient said he would work with me. And so we did the lifestyle changes, diet, supplements, attitude, exercise, detoxification, etc. He went through bone marrow transplant. He did what his doctor said. He lived 14 years, and the first 13 years of that were an excellent quality of life. And then he went rapidly downhill, died at 14 years into his disease. That's patient B. Patient C, again, multiple myeloma, about the same age, 40-year-old white male, was told by his doctor, without therapy, you've got 2 months to live. With therapy, you've got 2 years to live at best. He was an Oxford professor. He said, I'm not going to accept that. So he got my book, Beating Cancer with Nutrition. He did a lot of nutrition, detoxification, many of these alternative therapies, high dose vitamin C, supplements. He went into remission and he wrote a book, Confessions of Medical Mutiny was the name of his book. And he lived 11 years after his death sentence. The point is, nutrition doesn't cure all cancer, but it improves outcome in almost all cancer patients. And if you really want to get the best of this, start following my book, 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient, now,
Can you
before
show
the
the book?
doctor
Can
tells
you
you
can
have
you can you
cancer.
hold the book up, please?
Yes, indeed. It's available on Amazon, bookstores around the world. 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient. It's got full color. If you buy the Kindle version, it's got links, hyperlinks, so you can go to the original article in the National Library of Medicine or to the website or YouTube. So it's very interactive. I think you'll find the book not only informative, but enjoyable.
Will you ever put it on audio?
I will. Yes, that's coming.
Please let me know as soon as you do that. Okay, I
Will
really
do.
want to know that one. Now, before we go, not before we go, there's a few more questions I want to ask you. So if you can, um,
Good.
so we've talked about the whole physical thing, the nutritional thing. Where does the mind play with a cancer patient? The way you feel. Okay.
The mind is the trump card. The mind is absolutely essential here, Dr. Wolfe. I would start with the mind with any cancer patient, and I would tell them you're going to need hope and a fighting spirit and a sense of empowerment, and you're going to need a co patient. A co patient means someone who's going to help you. Cancer, Mount Cancer, I will say, is not easy to climb, and it's even more difficult to do it by yourself. And what I have found is that patients who have a co patient, that is a friend, a relative, mother, father, brother, rabbi, somebody who's going to help you, who picks you up by the scruff of the neck and says, we're not quitting yet, get up. Those patients do better. Now, let's talk about the mind. For thousands of years, mystics, philosophers, religious leaders, and now psychologists and physicians all agree to the power of the mind. Drug companies spend billions of dollars a year doing drug tests in which they have to eliminate the placebo effect. And what they find is that somewhere between 30 to 50% of the activity or the effectiveness of a drug is due to the placebo effect. It works because you believe it works. And so let's talk about the power of the mind. I'll take you back to the 1940s. Hans Selye, who was a physician, who said, I think stress has something to do with physical health, but how do I prove it? And so what he did is he tied rats to a table. He didn't pin them, he didn't inflict wounds or pain, he just took away their freedom. And 24 hours later, he sacrificed them and he did autopsies. And what he found was in 24 hours of stress, these animals had the atrophy of the lining of the gut, that is the beginning of ulcers. They had an atrophy of the thymus gland, that is a shrinkage of your immune system, T cell activation, the beginning of infections, heart disease, and premature aging. They had elevated cholesterol in their blood, the beginning of heart disease. And he basically said in 24 hours of stress, these animals were beginning to die. And what happens is the human body is built to tolerate small amounts of brief, sporadic stress. Our ancestors would have a brief encounter with the lion, fight or flight. You fight, you flight, you die, but it only goes on for a few seconds or a few minutes. If you have that same level of cortisol flowing in your body or stress for long periods of time, it will kill you. Deepak Chopra is an MD, medical doctor, who was also trained in Ayurvedic medicine and in quantum physics. And he's brilliant, and he has a very powerful saying: every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts. And this is powerful, and I have an entire chapter in my book, 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient, in which I discuss the whole business of mind over medicine, the power of your mind. This is where we start talking about forgiveness. Forgive people. Self-esteem. Love is good. Jesus told us, love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say instead of yourself. You have to, all love starts with yourself, self-esteem. We work our way into journaling. Write down your thoughts. We don't talk about Thanksgiving. You cannot be grateful and unhappy at the same time. And I see our cancer patients out there saying, what do you mean? I got cancer. My doctor said I got a poor prognosis. I got to go through all this nasty therapy. How can I be grateful? You're alive. You have hope. If you do things right, there's a good chance you will make it through this and be better off for it. And I have had many cancer patients teach me, and I quote, cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. And what they're saying is cancer is a wake-up call. It is a way of saying my life wasn't working. I didn't appreciate myself, people around me. I did not have my priorities in the right order. And cancer forced me into a wake-up call. And I'll quote the Tao Te Ching again. Sometimes new beginnings are disguised as painful endings. And I have had many cancer patients who say, I'm so much more relaxed, peaceful, at peace, thankful, grateful for every second. I'm more cordial and reverential to people and life. It changes the way you think. So cancer is a wake-up call. And if you use it properly, it's the beginning of a new life for you.
Beautiful. Um, Before we end this, I want to go over just a couple more things, and that is can you explain to people the difference between the sugar in processed sugar and the sugar in fruit? Because
Yes.
yeah, that one people keep getting confused about, and they hear it all over. Even from practitioners, there's so much confusion out there.
Yes, very definitely. It's a good point, and it's a very good question. And so there's a very powerful soundbite: sugar feeds cancer, and that's true. And if I could just have 30 seconds to elaborate, when a cancer patient is diagnosed, one of the tests that is commonly run in a big city hospital is a PET scan, PET, positron emission tomography. And what the doctor does is they inject radioactively labeled sugar into the veins of a patient. And then they use a Geiger counter device to track where that sugar went, because that's where the cancer is, because cancer has a fourfold increase in glucose metabolism over normal healthy cells. So it's a sugar feeder. Good. And then the doctor usually will tell the patient, go home and eat whatever you want. That's not a good idea. Now, let's talk about sugar in processed foods versus fruit. Americans consume roughly 150 pounds of refined sugar per year. I get almost none, so somebody else is getting 300 pounds. Americans consume about 45 gallons of soft drinks a year, and all of those sugars are like injecting sugar into your bloodstream. And there's a number of problems with that. One, it changes the microbiome in the gut, and these sugars feed unfriendly yeast. Number two, it's elevating blood glucose. It's creating a problem with glucose, insulin, and insulin like growth factor, IGF, which is a cancer instigator. Now, what's the difference between that and fruit? Here's what happens with fruit. Fruit is sweet, yes. Fruit is a mixture of fructose, sucrose, and glucose. Some fruits are sweeter than others. All of them have a glycemic index. Some fruits have a lower glycemic index than grains. For instance, cherries have a glycemic index of 20, whereas whole wheat has a glycemic index of 60. That doesn't mean you should avoid whole wheat, grains, legumes, or fruit. Let me explain. So, researchers asked the same question that you and your viewers did, and they said, "Well, is fruit good or bad for you, given the sugar that's in it?" Harvard researchers looked at 44,000 men in Hawaii, and they looked at their fruit intake versus their incidence of prostate cancer. And they found the more fresh fruit these men ate, the lower their risk for prostate cancer on a dose dependent response. Researchers from Harvard looked at women and breast cancer, and they looked at 75,000 women over the course of 24 years. And they found that the women who had 2 servings of peaches per week had a 40% reduction in the incidence of breast cancer. You say, wait a minute, I thought fruit had sugar in it. You're telling me not only it doesn't feed cancer, it lowers the incidence of cancer. I'll go on. Fruit lowers the incidence of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and other diseases. Actually, even improves the immune function. One study in Europe, in London, they looked at senior citizens and they said, well, I wonder if all this sugar lowers the immune competence. And they looked at senior citizens and shingles. Shingles is herpes zoster. It's chicken pox being reawakened in the body, and it's a very painful condition, a rash on the body. And what they found again is the more fresh fruit these senior citizens ate, the lower their risk for shingles. It improves immune function. Well, I don't understand. I thought fruit has got sugar in it. Yes, but here's what's happening. In Mother Nature, fruit has sugar. How is Mother Nature going to put this sugar out there and protect itself? Fruit is rich in pectins, potassium, vitamins, minerals, bioflavonoids, and a rich mixture of these minor dietary constituents that have antifungal capacity. So, how does a peach sit outside and not be invaded by a fungus? And there is a strong link between fungus and cancer. And the answer is fruit is rich in antifungal compounds. For instance, green and red fruits and vegetables contain a compound called phytoalexins, which they find are anti-cancer in every cell line tested. It's in fruit and it's anti-cancer. So when you eat whole fruit, you'll find that it's a powerful anti-cancer because not only is it feeding your body's immune system, it's providing you with potassium. And there's one of the factors that triggers cancer is a imbalance in the sodium potassium pump in the body. And that's a whole nother hour discussion where every cell in your body is swimming in the ocean. And if that electrolyte balance is proper, you have a healthy sodium potassium pump, which is that electricity we talked about before. But back to fruit. Fruit is helping out with that sodium potassium pump. It's giving you pectin, which is a prebiotic that feeds the friendly bacteria in the gut, which then gives off butyrate, which is a very powerful anti-cancer substance that the body absorbs. And it's like giving you the ultimate non-toxic chemotherapy every day if you eat whole fruit. Now, fruit juice is different. All the studies find that fruit juice does not have any benefits and, in fact, may be a detriment. That's back to just nothing but sugar. But when you eat whole fruit, then you can puree it, put it in your high speed blender. But whole fruit actually has extraordinary anti cancer properties.
That's amazing. And thank you. You know what? You cleared up so much for so many people. I bet you people right now are going, yeah, finally, someone put it together. So here we are. We're at the end, but just know something, everyone. I hope to have Dr. Quillin back on in the future because when it comes to nutrition and health, well, we can tell he's a genius. And I would like you to show your book, sir. Tell them where that you can get it, how they can get in touch with you, and maybe if there's anything coming up that you would like to tell everybody, okay? And what you would like, I know it's a lot, but what you would like to leave our listeners with.
Yes, definitely. My book, 12 Keys to a Healthier Cancer Patient, is in both paperback and in Kindle version. It's available on Amazon and bookstores, Barnes and Noble. The Kindle version is interactive. It's a lot of fun. If you like physical books, we've got that. It's in large type and it's full of color pictures, which makes it a lot more enjoyable to read. That said, um, what I would like to leave how you can get in touch with me. PatrickQuillin.com. My name, Patrick, Patrick, Quillin, Quillin.com, or gettinghealthier.com. Either one, you can get in touch with me through those websites. And what I would like to leave our patients with, our viewers, a sense of empowerment. What I'm sharing with people is you don't have to sit back and wait and be a victim. Too often, people feel like they're nothing more than a cork in the ocean. They have no influence on what direction they're going to go. You do. You're in a sailboat and you've got a rudder and a sail, and you have a lot of influence over what direction you're going to go and if you're going to survive the storm. And it's going to be based upon your skills in lifestyle medicine, as Dr. Ornish calls it, in my book, which is Epigenetics, in which case we're rising above genes and we're using lifestyle to change the way your body works, because a healthy human body is self-regulating and self-repairing. And that means it can prevent and reverse its own cancer if you do things right. And so my blessing for our viewers for the coming year and the coming decade is empower yourself, get healthy. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Quillin. Really appreciate it. And listen, everyone, guess what? Dr. Quillin will be back tomorrow, which is Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please tell your family to watch this show right now, because there's going to be questions, okay? There's no need to keep on living in pain and suffering. I mean, once you become the master of your mind and your body, like we've talked about here today, we move forward, and we move forward with truthful, powerful information. And that's what you're going to get by watching this show. I mean, look at the information that you've gotten just from this 1 hour and 10 minutes. So come back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you can't be here, just know something. We got something special. That is this. Now, that's 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Send your questions in on Intercom, YouTube, Facebook, okay? Or Instagram, and you can do it live tomorrow. And if you can't do it, then just put them down underneath right now when we post the show up on Facebook or on YouTube, and put those questions in, and we're going to answer them. And anybody that brings in questions live, okay, we're going to answer those instantaneously. You'll be first on the docket. Okay, so we really love to see you here. Please let your family and friends know, okay, because this is real information that can change your life very quickly. So I want to thank Dr. Quillin for joining me. Like I said, his information is always amazing, and he's so organized, and he's so thoughtful. Now, Thank you, sir.
Dr. Wolfe, thank you for sharing your viewers, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, and we will, and we'll see each other tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. So everybody, I'm going to leave everybody with a couple things, and that is that we released our A to Z Wellness Masterclass on New Year's, and we are getting so many calls coming in. So I just want to put this up there for those who are seeing it. If you want it, you just go to my page on itioh.com or docofdetox.com. Go to the top, and you'll see, you just click on Masterclass. If you use the word master, you'll get a lifetime free in this masterclass. And it's going to teach you why you have invisible bonds that are binding you and tying your body up, okay? And then don't forget, this Friday, okay, I will be doing my Q&A at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you've got any of those other health questions that you want, okay? Because and also, just know this, that the power to heal is yours, but not until you take massive action, okay? So look, when you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe below and make sure that you click on the bell to enable notifications so that you never miss a show. And just know, all our Q&As are time-stamped on YouTube. So all these questions that Dr. Quillin is going to be answering tomorrow, you'll be able to go to YouTube and watch his show, and it'll tell you exactly where your question is, so you can get right to it. And that's what we want you to do. We want you to take a get action and start moving forward. Also, next Wednesday, I will have Dr. Michael Finkelstein. He'll be on, and he's going to be talking about everything you need to know about Alzheimer's. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining me, and just remember something, okay? You were given a body by our Creator. We were created to create a masterpiece. Have a beautiful day. God bless.
Where's the love? Where is the love? The toxic truth must be told today. It's never black and white, only shades of gray. Where's the love, mama? For this I thirst. I know you always said I gotta love myself first. I gave $5 to breast cancer, but now I'm dying from the sweets. Was that really the answer to fight my mama's cancer? Where's the love, mama? Now that you're gone, my heart is empty. It feels so wrong. Doctor, stop the treatment. Start training me. All this therapy is starting to pain me. The media tells us lies, but never listens to our cries. They're all a bunch of fakers, cause they work for the money makers. The big FDA and the AMA. They say it's the only way, so we pay. Where's the love, mama? Why is daddy addicted to the drama? Why is our family always in trauma? They say terrorists are coming, but mama says they're already here. They force-vaxxed my sister, she doesn't even know what hit her. Let's make this right, help me turn on the light. Eat right, drink right, shine your light for me tonight. Fear is what they feed us, fear is what we demonstrate. Feeling like we don't stand a chance, can't break free from this corporate dance. What's their answer for cancer? Cut, poison, and burn. Where is the love, mama? When will we ever learn? You took an oath, you gotta practice what you preach. This contract you have broken, what is it you really wanna teach? Chemical gases, even in our shower, we can't even think. They've stolen all our power. The corporations we trusted, and now we are busted. A country of fear, our faith no longer here. Love lost in lies, my breaking heart dies. We need an evolution, a love revolution. The world plays with my love. Is there an answer up above? The message I keep getting is self-love. Love is the answer. Show me the love. Love is the answer. Show me the love.
I hope you enjoyed Where's the Love by Sage Wolfe. So, where is the love? It's always been here, or should I say it's always been inside you. Society tells you that it comes from them and everyone else. Well, how's that working for you? Healthcare says we will heal you. Society says we will love you. Understand this, until you embrace self-love and self-care with all your heart, you will continually be torn apart. How would you like to claim your God-given right to unlimited potential? To do this, you must take massive personal action to uncover your Braveheart warrior within, because this is the only way to win. Here's my gift to you. Never forget, where the mind goes, the body follows. My first gift is my Braveheart 12 Loving Steps, and my second gift is my masterclass, A to Z Wellness. These two gifts will empower you to release the invisible bonds that bind you on an emotional and physical level. Look, live the life that you were promised. God bless, and know that you always matter. If you're looking for life-saving and life-changing information, well, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to click and subscribe. Stay connected.